And hi, we're back now. We're back sitting down here with Nick, getting ready for the interview. And it's it's gonna be a good one. I think we're gonna have a lot to talk about. And Daisy, you were there as well.
Yes, I am here. I am here. Goat Man was a lot for me. I'm still working on my Chupacabra. I'm getting to the end though. I got only like a quarter left of my Chupacabra.
For
That
people
one is
who are
pretty
for people
okay.
who are watching this later on YouTube, don't look up what that means. But
Don't know what that means. Don't worry about it.
It's a mystery.
Fine. You don't need to Google anything.
you know, it's not a mystery, Daisy.
The museum.
No, I was
I
gonna
don't-
say who
what?
who writes our questions.
Oh, well, that's definitely not a mystery because every single week we like to talk about our interview sleuths, our interview sleuthing team who curate questions for our guests. Sometimes, most of the time, you see me and Dom on camera. Okay, Daisy and Dom. Yeah, they obviously do everything. False. That is a lie. Wrong. You are incorrect. That is so untrue. We have a whole team of people who help make Folkwise happen, and in part, some members of the team contribute as interview sleuths. That means that they come up with the research and curate the questions for every single guest that we have on the show. They are wonderful, fantastic, intelligent, articulate, specific, very well-informed individuals.
That's a new one this week.
I'm trying to throw in some new ones here and there, and just keep it active.
Keep you on your toes.
To keep it live and active. And we come up with stuff, and we ask the guests that. So if you hear something that you think is funny, if you think the guest is reacting like, "Wow, that was really cool," and you find it fascinating, it provokes something thoughtful in your own experience as a viewer, audience member, whatever level of engagement you're participating in this week. Don't thank me and Dom. Thank the interview sleuths.
Thank you for that plug. Thank you for that plug, Daisy. Nick, you ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
All right. Hey, Nick, first question for you. How can a first question for you. How can a folklorist use everyday experiences and objects to teach about human rights issues?
Oh, man. While we're looking at my blogs from the Czech Museum, weren't you?
No,
not you, your sleuths. No.
The sleuths.
First of all, I worked in an immigration museum. Think about it. When you immigrate to a place, you cannot take everything with you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be very selective about what you can and can't bring. If you can bring anything at all. So people, when they bring something all the way across, 6,000, 9,000 miles, it's got to be meaningful. And it's got to evoke memories of home. But also be a balm at times of struggle. Whether that's war, disaster, human rights violations, those sorts of things. But I think that's what I really focused on with teaching. It's like, this looks like a dress, this display, but this was a dress that somebody's mom made for them. It's one of the few things that they have from this hometown where they were. Because it was Carl Lindahl, several AFSs ago. I think it was in New Orleans back in 10 years ago this year, actually.
Yeah, that would have been 2012. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. He said, when we lose the tangible is what remains. So those memories, even if that object broke, you have the memory of it, and then you have the process and also the internal idea of it to help you potentially reconstruct it. It's not going to be the same, but it's imbued with meaning. So that's kind of the best Spark Notes explanation that I can do of that, is that somebody's life in that object.
There's something intangible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
That's a great answer, yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
This next question I think gets less global and more personal, or maybe global, depending on you answer it. But Nick, in what ways is creating art as a folklorist important for like self care as a field worker?
How much time do you have?
I think technically until 11, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I will say probably the biggest source of inspiration from that. Hang around other folklorists, and you notice they're making stuff all the time.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Um, like I'm trying to think of a few I know who are like expert makers. Andrea Graham, Ann Pryor, Matilda Lind, and I thought, they're doing it with fiber. I could do it with ink and paper.
Mm-hmm.
That's when in Baltimore, and I started live drawing and really drawing my notes out during AFS sessions. Started with folks I knew who would be cool with it, like friends of mine up the road, Frandy and Marcus Cederstrom and Anna Rue, the folks at Wisconsin, and of course Tim's now in BC. But people who would appreciate it too, and that really gave me kind of a thing like people like that. And after the conference, though, like it's hard because it's like you don't want to be seen as rude, you don't want to be seen as not paying attention. Generally, I've discovered that most people are pretty cool with it because somebody who's neurodiverse, drawing is a form of self care so that I can give people the best that I have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I joke that I listen to like noisy shoegaze when I write grants because it kept like My Bloody Valentine and also metal like Pelican and Deaf Heaven because it takes my ears so that my eyes can focus. And that's the idea of like crafting those processes. People do that because it's not only making stuff beautiful, but it's also because you can't imagine not doing it. So I
It's
think
also
uh, but I also think it's good for folk artists to have, or for folklorists to have some sort of creative tradition or creative practice, because we're also the folk that engages us with that. I went to a church in Bloomington, and I was looking at these wooden doors there. It was a Silk Road ensemble who had interviewed for my work with Traditional Arts Indiana. Was doing a concert. I can't remember the church, but the doors said this door was constructed by Deacon Warren Roberts.
Wait,
It was the
that Warren Roberts?
at Warren Roberts.
Wow.
Oh, he was also a craftsperson,
And a deacon, apparently.
and a deacon. Yeah, and so that makes you think. I was probably like 21 when I saw that, and I was like, okay, there's space for us to have a creative practice. Some people it's going to be very public, and for some people it's very private. Somebody like Merrick Bennett, who a comic artist who works a lot with Vermont Folklife Center and Andy Clovis, and
Mm-hmm.
he does it as a every folklore supplements his work, whereas for us that work supplements what we do. So I think it's absolutely important. It also gets us thinking about questions like, well, Hilda Lind, for example, go back to her work with weavers in Estonia. She's a weaver, she's a spinner, she's a knitter. She's made her own musical instruments. If you've been on that other side, it may be easier to ask the right questions, get the right ideas about stuff.
Yeah.
Matilda, come on, Folkwise.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
Really needs to come on.
Yeah,
We'll work on
Matilda would
that.
be fun. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I'll hop in the DMs.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you're also describing a deeply reflective process, which is like important and fascinating to me as a practitioner of being a folklorist. Like, if you're not being reflective about the ways that you personally participate in your own communities, whether that's like a very explicitly expressive or creative or artistic endeavor, or if it's just the ways that you like tell jokes and share memes or like talk to people, use slang, whatever. If you're not being reflective about it, you're kind of missing the way that folklore applies to yourself. So I think you're touching exactly on like that element of being creative. Like we all got into this because we're interested in the ways that people are creative every day. Like celebrate the things that you do. Take time to spend in the things that you do as a folklorist, whether that's with your fandom, making musicals at Dom, or
I was
like
gonna say,
whether it's us.
should I bring out the thing I made last night?
maybe later, but like any of the ways that we engage like in those communities and we begin to recognize them through our own studies of folklore make us better folklorists. And I think what you do with comics is exactly that. I can't imagine somebody, I don't know, any response to somebody being annoyed with you drawing in class about the thing that's going on has completely missed the point of both learning as well as the deeply reflective process that you seem to embody in the comic creation and artwork that you do. So awesome. You made me think about all these. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Talk about I had Pravina Shukla for my first folklore class, and I remember looking up like rate your professors, and somebody says she embodies folklore. I'm like, yeah, because somebody who is a scholar of dress and adornment and costume, it's
Embodiment.
Yeah, it's absolutely. We talked. I mean, that was one of the terms that was part of the class. But that is absolutely it. Like having something to embody. I'm married to an ethnomusicologist and like somebody with a music history background. And what was interesting is my wife told me that classmates never performed music. They never played. Only one of them played herself, and she's gone on to be a music theory professor. But this idea of like you're studying music, but you're not. Some people have the gift of like talking about music. Because I mean, there's some ethnomusicologists who can't play a lick to save their life. And they know that, and they're okay with that. But being willing to learn and listen too. Somebody has to be the spectator, and somebody has to be the recipient. And
maybe
same with art.
And maybe that's a little bit of like a distinction between folklorists and other kinds of culture workers. Where I'm not sure I don't know if, I don't want to say every folklorist is like that, but an attention to the importance of that, I think, is something that folklorists have an advantage in because of our attunement to the ways that community comes together, the way that we learn from each other really informally, and that celebrating those are pieces of what we do and are interested in. I don't know.
Oh, that completely makes sense, because if you think about like the sort of evolution of anthropology and folklore, like I'm a folklorist teaching in an anthropology department. I explain this to my students because I had some students be like, "You could study this?" I'm like, "Yeah." A lot of them are anthro majors. There's still time. There's still time. But people were encouraged to go outside of themselves. So, and I told them it's like anthro used to get you to go to Bali or Trobriand Islands or to some unknown or largely unknown Finno-Ugric speaking group. Folklorists encourage you to dive in because it's that idea of lived expertise. And I think that's one thing that, I mean, it's taken a while. I mean, we do have folklorists who do study cultures that are not their own. But there is definitely more scrutiny. You have to pass the test with folks. You have to be very conscious and aware. Like took a class once from somebody who worked with a tribe in Mexico. Wrote a book, pissed off the tribe in the process. So that's the challenge you have, is trying to make those connections, but also I think that it does make it easier for folklorists. Silence.
Dom,
Yes.
Ready for the next question?
No, I'm thinking about this.
I mean,
follow-up
I'm
we
kind of
have.
taking it in too. Yeah,
No,
we
I
have
am
this
taking it in.
follow up.
No, this follow-up.
We have a follow up.
I don't think I want to
Yeah.
ask this as a question. I kind of want to just like throw this past you. And
Yeah.
you started talking about you started like doing comics at conferences in AFS in Baltimore in 2019, correct?
Hmm?
So, okay, how do you feel about the argument that what you're doing is kind of like a personal experience field note?
Can't argue with that at all. It is absolutely my experience of this place.
Mhm.
I just in the background, I did a day-long tour with Elaine F. and Dean Kreml in Baltimore of murals and painted screens and row houses.
Yeah, sounds like Elaine.
And yeah, Elaine is of course like thrilled. Elaine and Dee were both like absolutely like loving these drawings. But one of the drawings, my ideas came because we were talking about this guy who is an artist and a chef who works at the Island Gallery of Contemporary Art, downtown Kevin Brown. And also talking about places like the American Visionary Art Museum. I was talking about with my students. I showed them this giant art car that looked like a pink poodle.
I love art cars. I think they're
And I asked
so
them,
fascinating. I love
you're
them.
asking the question, what can this tell us about the world? Looking at a rotating statue of Divine in full drag with a pistol in their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm wondering if they're going to be silent. Students went. They went for it. They absolutely went for it. Because I think also, like, if we just write stuff down, some people like to do that and then they like to type it up and store it. And everybody has their own way of experiencing things. And that's where I am. Like, I draw those experiences out. Sometimes I'll write notes and then I'll go back and fill stuff in. I was literally Googling people's images during like the AFS plenary, like the opening ceremony, because I'm literally drawing on the fly during the 2021 conference,
Yeah.
2020 conference. So it's an impressionistic, and it's also improvised. I think that is the way that I do things. Like about my grandfather, the first generation of comic artists, planned stuff out. He sketched stuff out, but I'm trying to capture a moment in time at that very moment. So that's a very interesting, like planning it out versus just trying to take count at the time. So it makes for a very different experience. And Eric Bennett and I talk about this a lot. He's my mentor of sorts, and he said that some people plan and some people go for it, and I'm a person that really kind of goes for it with the drawing.
Sure. So you mentioned your students, and you mentioned at the top of your appearance, Cornell College, older than the university. So can you talk a little bit about like the class schedule and calendar at Cornell College, and kind of what you see as like the pros and cons to that kind of model?
So I should say my students I teach are at UT Iowa. So
Mm-hmm.
they're on more of a semester schedule, but
Yes.
I work at Cornell College, which is famous for its one course at a time program. It's a tiny liberal arts college, about 1,000 students. It's in Mount Vernon, Iowa, which I joke is the Stars Hollow of the Cedar Valley. It is like Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls. Like it's this quaint, amazing small town that has like a one-screen movie theater. They just play one movie a week, and but there is Cornell literally has a student do class from 9 to 11, a 2-hour break, and then they do class from 1 to 3, and they do this for about 18 days in a row.
Wow.
You're only taking one course. And it's one of 3 colleges in the US to do it. One is Colorado College. I know some folks have taught there. And there's the other one is the Maharishi University, which is the Transcendental Meditation college that's down in southern Iowa.
Wow.
So like like they have a giant like flying yogi center and everything down there. It's that town could be an ethnography in itself, Fairfield, Iowa. But the structure of it means that students can dive in. Like I today, I work full-time as a director of donor relations. So my job is to basically report to supporters, to like scholarship donors, things like that. This is what students and faculty and staff are up to.
Mhm.
They get a chance to dive into a topic very intensively for about 3.5 weeks. Then they have a couple days break, and they go do this again. There's 4 blocks per semester. You have to take 3, and you can take 1 as like a experiential time. But so I was with a group of students today for a food security class, and we were up at Seed Savers Exchange in Decorah, Iowa. That was the day of class. It was experiential learning. They were doing everything from going inside a fridge full of thousands of species of seeds to harvesting ground apples to prevent rot from causing soil infection. And they didn't have to worry about, oh, I have to do Spanish when I get home, or I have to study for calculus. That's their class.
Mhm.
And it brings people from all over the world to the point where even for Iowa, which is not 3/4 of the students are from outside of Iowa, and 1 every 4 is BIPOC. So I talked to a guy from New York City today. He's a physics major who it's like, yeah, the block plan is why I came here. It's different, and I wanted to do that.
Nice.
I will point out somebody in the chat, Tim Flood 11 said, "Talk about going hard to the net." I don't know what that means. I'm hoping you do.
I think Tim Flood is talking about hockey, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Tim, give us a little bit more. Going hard to the net.
Come on,
Is
Tim
that
Flood,
a
do
hockey
your
thing?
best.
No.
Wondered if it was relevant to the seed situation. Anyway.
But your job at Cornell, you explain. Can you explain again, like during the interview, your job at Cornell College, especially because I feel like I just got to see it in action a little bit.
Yeah, so donor relations is basically like stewarding donors, and I work in a department of like 18 folks who work with alumni and donors. It's actually a really good place for a folklorist because if you are somebody who really likes studying college culture, and really the idea of getting at the heart of why people are here, why this place matters to them, and why they're, these are people who've decided to basically give their life savings or their portfolios after death or even while they're alive to this college so that other people can have that experience. And so you're going to talk to donors, if you're going to talk to supporters and alumni, you have to know the place too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I went with the class today for that exact same reason.
Yeah.
So when I was interviewing, I was actually told you work in nonprofits, but your folklore background was really of interest to people. One thing I was telling a colleague at Cornell, it's like folklore sometimes are afraid to ask for money. We like to like write the grants and just pray that the panel will do our thing, or we get other people to fundraise for us, or we'll put on an event. But that's actually because we know context and because we value personal relationships and creativity. It's actually a really good field for working in like development and fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
I actually found that I really like it as a folklorist because everything that I did as an ethnographer can apply to building relationships.
Yeah.
Tim Flood 11 just clarified. Just putting in that work, it's a fascinating method of learning. So the thing is like talk about going hard to the net. Talk about going hard to the net. Yeah, like just putting in that work.
Okay.
Like it's like a really
Tim and I are hockey fans, so like I was
probably there's probably something there. But yeah, like just going like all into it and doing the practice piece of saying like let's just spend time on the thing. Also, Death Loris points out that we need to connect you with Megan Hillier Geisler, who was on our show and is a philanthropy PhD student at what is the distinction? It's IU which campus, Tom?
PUI, but I think it's about to be
IU
something new
PUI.
in a
it's
couple
changing.
Yeah.
It's going to be IU Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well it's IU Indianapolis, but she's amazing and does work with philanthropy and is minoring in folklore. And like, I think that this
Perfect.
blend like totally crosses over and is really underrepresented in
Yeah,
the
you should
field.
hang out.
Like, y'all should hang out. Anyway, we'll hook you up.
I think also because folklorists are cheerleaders for culture.
That's another great fun way to say what a folklorist does. Dom, you always say folklore is an enthusiasm enthusiast, which I know comes from James Dalton Bell, who is always in our chat. But a cheerleader for culture is also interesting. Fascinating. I don't know.
Because you think about it though, like if you're a leader of an organization, you have to be a cheerleader. You have to say like if you're not a cheerleader, if you're like the one cheerleader in the back that doesn't know the routine, people will know, and it has to start from a leadership perspective. Like as a former nonprofit director, you're the voice. You're like the coach of the cheer squad.
Yeah.
And
you're the person who's out there saying you matter.
Mm-hmm.
The shit you do matters. And yeah, Death Laura says, we do be hype people. Right? Like we're the hype person who's like, that's so cool that you do that cool fucking hobby, activity, livelihood, whatever, that nobody else, for whatever reason, dominant culture seems to not appreciate. Like, that's a cool thing that you've spent time doing, and folklorists do a lot of that.
I think also we're extension cords. Like we are not providing the power, we're providing the space between.
Now that I love. I love
that's
being
cool.
an
extension cord. Yeah.
I think the best
networker, the bringing people together, the connecting the communities across communities.
I was gonna say
like
connect the community to the money.
Yeah, I mean that also. Absolutely.
I'll give a really good example. So like I used to work at Tucson Meet Yourself, and one of the things, I was a stage manager, and I would introduce ensembles if there wasn't. My job is not to go up and perform Japanese traditional dance with Mari Kanata and the Suzuyuki Kai. My goal is to introduce them to the audience and get the hell out of the way. And then, of course, be like, hey, do you have like 5 more minutes? That's what we do. And I think we get really passionate about this stuff, but we have to get like publicly passionate about it. And that's not, and some people are more the type like, I want to research this and I want somebody else to be that person. And that is completely okay, because we don't have to be everything. Like, I've worked as a nonprofit director, but I didn't do everything. I hired a case manager for a job. And I think with museums, it's the same way. You have to be a hype person of your own department. You can work with others to make that happen. And I think that's where we start kind of pulling our resources together.
Hey Nick, speaking of Arizona, not the Tucson Meet Yourself, although shouts to that one. No, this is actually about your Archie Green field work. And what is it about like the liminality of Nogales, Sonora / Arizona that made your Archie Green study unique?
That whole region is a liminal space.
Oh yeah.
So I was talking with my colleague in anthro at Cornell today about how I told her about this project. So the background, I did ethnographic research on produce brokers in Nogales. Who are people who literally sell produce from the grower to the store and on no contracts. It's all word of mouth and trust, confianza. Because Nogales, Mexico is about 400,000 people. Nogales, Arizona is about 20,000 people. If you screw somebody over in Nogales, Arizona, you're gone. Like, you're just absolutely, like, there is a book of produce brokerages and distributors. And if your name is like with, I don't know their whole system, but they told me it's like, if you're not listed well in the book, you're done. And so it's a place where like competitors know each other. Their kids go to school together. It's like a world where they're competing. They may be both mango brokers because they're actually, I interviewed a mango broker who's like a 3rd or 4th generation Italian American. And Cerulli was his last name. And folks, they are the liminal space because they're not growing mangoes. They're not selling mangoes. They're like the conduit between the two.
The extension cord.
exactly. I think what's fascinating about that is because we have a lot of folks who study folklore and agriculture, um, but it's actually like folklore of agribusiness because
Mm.
traditionally folklore field has kind of been a little bit more critical of like industrial agriculture. However, these folks are very it's a very vernacular process. You have the trust of like a truck of tomatoes go from Sonora or Sinaloa in Mexico
Mm.
all the way to Michigan based on trust. It was a phenomenal experience because it got me interested in occupational culture. This is a very professional culture. I interviewed a lot of guys with big desks and
Hmm.
people who they all went to like the big schools of management and things like that, or they went and they worked on the family farm. But also interesting about it because it's a desert landscape. You've got Tohono O'odham, you've got the Mexican American world, but then these guys are all Lebanese, Greek, and Italian immigrants
Huh.
who came to Northwest Mexico and to that region. Similarly, because the desert there is the same kind of as the desert in the sort of scrubland of the Mediterranean. And so it's like it's not quite home, but it is home. And so this project, like I said, it was fascinating. All my folks have since passed, but spent a lot of time just at people's desks, just listening to them tell stories about. I had a guy who was a 90, I think he's 95 now. He was a POW in World War II, and he told stories about being in the prisoner of war camps, but then talked about, oh yeah, I was just driving one day and I flipped a truck of watermelons. He was just talking about, like, yeah, just a huge truck of watermelons. Like, I'm just like, but he'd also been through prisoner of war camp, so he's just like, so that was, everybody has this unique story to tell, but I think it really shows that even in very professionalized corporate, a very corporate environment, you can still have sort of vernacular culture.
Yeah. Especially occupational. Did you ever? This is off topic, but did you ever, when you were at Traditional Arts Indiana, did you ever get to meet Gus? Uh,
Like, what did he do? Context here.
the memory painter who was in the prisoner of war camp in World War II.
No,
Okay,
no,
because
I was mostly doing field work in Greene County and Monroe County.
okay, he was in Greene County. I think, what county is that? He was in Columbus,
He's in Bartholomew County.
Bartholomew County. There it is. But I remember one time John asked him, "Have you ever seen that movie Bridge on the River Kwai?" And he goes, "I hate that movie. There was no whistling." Which is what I will always take from that wonderful man. But yeah, it was fascinating. It's fascinating to write a question and then just get a complete, like, I won't say 180, but a completely like different nuance to the answer than what I expected from reading the, I don't know, blurb on the Library of Congress website about your fielder. That's very fascinating.
It was yeah. Really, I say like doing that field work can change your understanding of the world too.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know much about border town culture until I was there. And when you have one of the busiest port cities in,
Yeah.
like entry, just I had a student when I taught at University of Arizona. Her dad was the mayor of Nogales, Mexico. She literally walked across the border every day to go to school in Arizona.
Yeah.
Like, and we don't like think about crossing a country border to go to school. I mean, still starting to cross the street. We get in our cars.
I could cross the state border at recess in grade school, but that's about it. I think it's about time to break into some funsy questions.
Yes.
Especially because
Yeah.
speaking of border lore, uh, Nick, what can you tell us about the pirates of the Ohio River?
Pirates of the Ohio River. So like I grew up my home county in Indiana is Posey County. The only Posey County in the country, bordered by the Wabash River, which also goes through a lot of northern Indiana and into Ohio, and then the Ohio River. And what's crazy about this is that nearby is probably about an hour away is a town called Cave in Rock, right? And it's literally like a cave overlooking the Ohio River.
Yeah,
and River
Cave in
Pirates
Rock.
used to like hide in there. They actually filmed a couple movies in it. They filmed How the West Was Won, and then they filmed one of the Disney Davy Crockett movies in this cave.
Oh, no way.
Literally, some of my ancestors were connected to one of those gangs that used to camp over by Cave and Rock. So that's kind of the river pirate idea. Is that I don't like my grandfather will know way more about this, but one of the Hart brothers were my distant relatives of mine.
Mhm.
My great grandmother was a harp. My family, though, yeah, they're Southern Indiana, very, very culturally Southern. Originally came from Appalachia, a lot of them. So I have
Yeah.
Appalachian roots in North Carolina. I learned only a couple years ago, and it makes sense.
So earlier in the interview, even Nick, you mentioned 3 different universities you were at studying folklore: Indiana, Western Kentucky, and then Memorial. Of those 3 campuses, which has the best building legend?
Ooh. It depends on what you're looking for.
Give me some options.
Okay, Indiana, the Wells Library is sinking because they forgot to counter the weight of the books in it.
Oh, please.
Jim
It's pretty
Jones.
good,
No,
honestly.
the Langston Library at Cincinnati is also sinking.
Jim Jones is of Jonestown fame. Lived in Edmondson too at Collins Living Learning Center.
That is true. Or I've
Actually,
heard
no,
that.
it's
I've
not.
Heard that. I've heard that. I mean,
Lived in Ashton Quad.
he lived in Ashton.
He did. I lived there for the summer. Context: it's the single occupancy dome, so it's the stereotype of the loner dome.
Mm-hmm. I
Western
wasn't
Kentucky
gonna. I wasn't gonna make the comment. I'm glad you did.
Anyway, the Western Kentucky has their admissions building and their like financial aid building is also the site of at least one student death. There's ghost lore around there, and Memorial's. It's hard because it's a younger campus. Like campus was mostly built in the 60s because in Canada, a lot of the campuses, while we were spending money on Vietnam, they were spending money on infrastructure.
Oh no!
Fancy
Horror
that,
of horrors.
It's a lot. There's a lot of brutalism and quite a bit of asbestos, though.
Oh wow.
Anyway, though, but St. John's was the oldest city in North America, one of the oldest cities in North America.
That's right.
Full of all kinds of stories. I don't know as much about that because it wasn't really as like my area, but a lot of people believe in the old hag, which
Yep.
David Hufford famously wrote about, and Diane Goldstein taught us about, and so a lot of people believe that stuff is real. I will say though, probably one of the best urban legends that evolved while I was in St. John's was the abandoned ship, the Lyubov Orlova. So there was this Russian Antarctic level cruise ship called the Lyubov Orlova, which is named after a Soviet singer. And by the time I got to St. John's, I hadn't paid its employees in like months. They were stuck on this boat, and they had to get like diplomatic assistance for all these folks to get off this boat. And the boat was confiscated, and it was listing in St. John's Harbor. So this is my cat toy I'm using, but the boat was listing like this. So you'd be eating at Atlantic Place Mall and looking out the window. There's this Russian ship that's like, it looks like it's going to just turn over. And so eventually they sold it to some Dominican tug company to have it broken down, shipbreaking. Well, off the coast of Newfoundland, the tug broke. Nobody could catch it.
Oh my god.
So like this boat, they think it's sunk off the coast of Ireland now, but there were stories going around that like there were cannibal rats on the Lyubov Orlova. There were, of course, of like the wreck of the Lyubov Orlova, like all these parodies of like maritime disaster songs, like the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. But it was, I mean, every time you see a boat that looks like a little precarious, it's like, oh, it's the Lyubov Orlova. it was sad though, because like for people like they're trying to get paid, do their job on this cruise ship, and
Yeah.
did a part of urban legend.
I think if we Daisy, you want to count that as a building? Does that work?
I think that counts. That's
Cool.
very good. Yeah.
Daisy, do you want to ask this next one?
Oh my god. Yes, I do. All right, Nick. What is a scout or camping song that you heard as a kid that your Girl Scout troop sings differently?
This example I can give is I was in Boy Scouts. They're in Girl Scouts, so there is a song about being glad to be a Boy Scout. The lyrics are, "I'm glad to be a Boy Scout. That's what I want to be. But if I weren't a Boy Scout," and then you would step in and go, "Blake, I would be." And so people have little different hand motions. I actually used this when I taught folklore and culture at Memorial. There was one. It was just this really funny guy who's like, he said a farmer I would be. He was going like this, like with his thumbs, like a guy had his thumbs down. He's like, "Give, Betsy, give. The kids gotta live."
Oh my
Like,
god.
yeah, it's like, but everybody does this in a
What?
row, and everybody like keeps repeating it. So at the end, you have like 7 people doing this. So one of them is usually a Girl Scout I would be, and the person goes, "Ding dong, hi there, want to buy some cookies?"
Right.
So, and then they repeat this over and over, and then finally, after like 6 of them, this guy goes, "Give, Betsy, give the
Oh my
kids."
god.
Some verses have lasted more than others. Like
Oh my
I
gosh.
went to a camp in Kentucky where it was a redneck I would be, and I'm not gonna even repeat it.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Probably good.
I will
It
forever be
was-
fascinated.
Oh my
but-
god.
It involves tobacco and animal cruelty.
Oh my
So,
god.
Oh, that's not where. Okay. Okay.
Not what I thought it was gonna be either, but okay, there we go. Death Lorist puts exclamation point ponies, which triggers our Nightbot command to give the 4-H pledge, which is I pledge my heart to clear thinking, my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, and my health to better living for my club community and my country and my world.
4-H is
Anyway.
4-H is a religion in Iowa.
I bet.
It is. Yeah.
I mean, the state
It's
fair
huge.
is like
Yeah.
is like a Saints festival. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I've only been to the Indiana State Fair. Like the Iowa State Fair, like they'll literally, you can park on the outskirts of town, and the Des Moines area transit will actually shuttle you into town because that's how many people go. It is crazy. But going back to the Boy Scout song, so I am a Girl Scout co-leader. I've been one. This is my 7th year, and I'm a co-counselor at a day camp because I can't do overnight camp. And so there's the same song, but there's different verses. So the one is a lifeguard I would be, and it's "Save yourself, man. I'm working on my tan."
Hell yeah.
That's
brother.
pretty good.
Girls,
That's pretty
the
good.
Boy Scout one is "Ding dong, hi there, want to buy some popcorn?"
Yeah.
Oh my
I mean, it's great popcorn.
It is good popcorn. And
That's funny.
there's some that are funny. Like people sometimes make up pop culture ones. Like a Boy Scout one I saw was a Tuscan Raider I would be. So the person was like, "R R R," like.
That's funny.
So yeah,
What the
so
heck?
best part is the people that know these songs, they're not like the oldest leaders. The person I know the best singer is a senior at College who's one of my daughter's student teachers. She's like 23, but she is literally a walking songbook.
Oh my gosh,
Her
that's
and her
awesome.
Yeah.
sisters, her mom is a scout leader, and her sisters are all scout camp counselors.
That's a baby folklorist right there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And
Hell yeah.
that's what's cool about it is that it's actually Jay Mackling, who I've known for several years. I haven't talked to him in quite a while since he retired, but he's the one that kind of encouraged me
just
to
met
like,
him.
get back into scout
He's
culture.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
He zoomed me a couple weeks ago.
Nice, yeah. Well, I mean, he did a whole book called All My Honor,
Yep.
Mhm.
which I used some in my doctoral thesis. I was like the one who kind of like encouraged me to like consider being an adult leader, and then I had girls, and so they decided on Girl Scouts. I gave them the option, and so it's funny though because it totally could be like a cottagecore in training opportunity. It's like
Could be.
got the kind of people that learn to build their own fires and like do all the kind of forest core stuff. So that's what's fun about it. But also like I think one of the things that's cool about it is I'm a camp dad. you're a different category when you're in that. It's kind of like being a camp mom at Boy Scouts, except BSA is now co-ed. But, so the culture that comes out of it is phenomenal.
Oh yeah. Now this
Playing
next
with
one,
my cat while I'm talking to you.
I was gonna say this next one just says show cats.
I will say it said show
weird.
cats in all caps,
I don't
and
know if
then
that's a question. It might be a command.
A demand. I'm
Yeah.
trying right now.
I
Oh.
added in the middle of it based on the first question that was asked by a chatter in the chat, Death Lorist, which was yet to be addressed. As an orange cat owner, do you know about the Jorts panel at AFS this year?
Hi guys.
Look at them.
What's up,
They're
dudes?
They're Jorts.
They're
Jorts 1,
Jortses.
Jorts 2. Oh my gosh.
This is Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Full name is Phoenix Sky Harbor.
Aw.
Nice.
And then the other one who's more social, he's Cinder. He's Cinderblock Bookshelf.
I love it.
Cinderblock.
Bookshelf.
Oh my god, I love that. I love that so much.
This is
Cinderblock
the-
Bookshelf.
We have what
That's
the
like
kids name
cellar
the
door.
cats.
Yeah.
So what the kids name the cats, Cinder and Phoenix, versus what the adults name them.
Love it.
Sure.
No, I did not know about the Jorts because this is like one of the first AFSs I will not be at because I'm going this year. I'm at a conference for donor relations folks instead. But my hope is to get back to AFS. When I did the 2020 AFS, I had only missed 2 AFSs since 2007.
Wow.
Wow.
And that was one because I had just gotten married, and the other one was because I was living in Newfoundland and it was in Boise.
Oh yeah.
It was 5
Makes sense.
flights.
Yeah.
Boy.
Wow.
Makes sense, yeah.
So,
Well, the Jorts panel about orange cats is a hybrid panel. So hopefully you'll be able to see it at some point, even if it's not during the session.
Oh,
but it is
Halo
about
guy?
the culture of orange cats. Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's
Look
he's
at that
He's
cat.
low-key nutty with it.
I love it. Look
Oh,
at
the
this
thing- the
fris-
toy
this
actually fell
frisky
off the
guy.
wall.
Ah.
Whoa! He's so strong.
Whoa!
How do you
My
get so strong?
cats are both meerkats as well. Like
I
they're-
love it.
So my cats are adopted bonded pair. They were 10 months old. We adopted them. My 8-year-old daughter, actually wrote a persuasive essay with her teacher's help on why she should have a cat.
Love it.
And it worked.
It worked, and she got 2.
Oh, that's her career goal. Like when I grow up, I want to be, and she put a cat.
I mean,
People are
If you could be
saying this
so
is
lucky.
the best Folkwise stream purely
aw.
because of cat content.
Aw.
Yeah, this
Thanks,
is the
Mary, it's
quality.
not.
I mean, normally, honestly, when you see the guest's pet, they just kind of sit there and then like
This cat is
anxiously
Dude.
look off in the direction opposite of the camera. Yeah, this cat getting it.
Phoenix is getting it right now.
Yeah, Phoenix.
yeah.
Phoenix. I mean, the chat
Does-
loves Phoenix. Phoenix is a star.
love it, love it, love it. Very good.
Most of the time, I can't get him to come near me though. He's the shyer one. He doesn't like being petted as much. The other one is the kind who will like dig under the laptop and say, "Pay attention to me."
Love it. Very good.
Yeah, he's like snapping at her right now.
Can we ask one more question before we go to our game, Nick?
Let's do it.
Nick, what's your latest fiber arts endeavor?
Couple ones. One is I've got yarn for the fall. I haven't started on it.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
What
Maybe-
kind and what color?
I have multiple colors. I made socks last year. Like it was my first. I use looms. I use a sock loom.
Oh yeah.
And my
Ooh,
wife
nice.
stole my socks, and I have to
Oh
make
my
her
gosh.
some. And then she said they're like the best socks they're perfect
Aw.
for her.
Yeah,
I was
of
like,
course.
Okay. The other one is I'm actually been doing more drawing and writing lately, and but I have a sewing lesson set up. I'm a kilt wearer, and I'm actually taking a class to learn how to make a skirt
Oh, nice.
That's so cool.
because I identify as genderqueer, so it's part of my expression is
Yeah.
I wear skirts and kilts. And,
That's awesome.
I did an undergrad too, except I like cut my shorts off to make a skirt.
Yeah, you're like,
technically the same
you're
thing,
like-
but
yeah, you're like, I think I could level up my skill right now.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you're versed enough to, yeah.
I have not worn my kilt in like since I don't know 2018. It's been a second. We used to me and Angus, like the guy who does the finances at Folklore and Musicology, used to throw a Scotland party every year, and we have not in years. So I haven't worn my kilt in so long.
Oh,
Actually, working with folk artists is why I started wearing a kilt. This is a pandemic level story. So, in 2020, we had at the National Czechoslovak Museum and Library where I worked, we had an 85-year-old folk artist from Moravia in Czechia who literally wears folk dress every single day. And she and this group of folks from the small town in the Moravian region actually rescue folk clothes from the trash that people were throwing away. They started a movement called Folklore's Not Dead. And a friend of mine from Cedar Rapids who lives over there is involved in it. But this woman literally wore folk clothing every single day. Like they had to convince her not to get on the airplane from Prague in it. She should probably wear more conventional clothes. But yeah, and it's an amazing work. And I was super inspired by that because I'm thinking like, okay, what would mine? I'm part German, part Scottish, part English, Southern Indiana background. One of my shirts I almost wore tonight is a shirt with Southern Indiana place names.
Oh,
including Stony Lonesome and Gnawbone.
Yes.
Oh, Gnawbone, friend of the show, Gnawbone. I've talked about Gnawbone on the show so often.
Anyway, though, so a friend of mine said, "I have a kilt. You should totally get one. You've got enough to set." I did during the pandemic, and I own 9.
Oh my god!
I wear them every day.
Hell
Round
yeah!
of applause. I love that.
Love that. Yeah,
That's
ladders,
incredible.
people.
Ladders
this is
for
a
that.
vibe.
Preemptive ladders. Daisy, you want to do the honors on this last part?
I do. This is going to be so fun.
I'm real excited.
Nick, that was the end of our funsy questions and the core of the interview in terms of any kind of question. I don't know, except one, which is have you ever made a tier list before?
I have not.
Well, you're in luck. Sometimes on the show, we ask our guests after the core set of interview questions to play a fun game with us. Usually, it's making a tier list. A tier list is something that comes from fighting games online, but lately on the internet, and particularly on Twitch, it's used to rank things in everyday life, which is what folklore is. Folklore is the stuff about everyday life, creativity in everyday life. So, we have curated a very specific tier list for you and your expertise only to, allocate rankings to each of these autobiographical comic creators. If you haven't clicked watch stream already, go ahead and click it. Dom will go ahead and read out loud each of the comic artists represented in this tier list by photo or a hand-drawn self-portrait, and we just really would like your expertise, your opinion, your view, whatever perspective on each of these autobiographical comic creators. We rank them from S to D. S is superior, superb, the better than best, all the way down to D, which is dead last, the worst. You don't like them. They could just be, why'd you even include them on the list? There are some precedented modifications for this, but this is your tier list for your opinions only. So, without further ado.
Further ado, hold on, I'm having a technical issue.
With further ado, this is a list that we very specifically brought together based on our knowledge of your own comic interests, as well as whatever popular comic, autobiographical comics specifically, are popular today. Many of these books people have either read or seen, at least at bookstores, but also hopefully there are some more niche names in here that you can elaborate on more specifically as a comic creator yourself. So, this will be really fun once the technical issue is resolved, which I'm not sure
It's almost.
what it is. Oh, I see. I see.
Hey.
Yes.
All right. Let's
Here we
get into
go.
it. Let's. I'm gonna move.
This was a Twitch specific scene.
It was an
Thing.
OBS. It was an OBS problem, but we're back.
Yes, but we fixed it.
Okay. Where were we?
First name up.
First name up. Okay. You ready to go, Nick?
Let's do it.
First
Let's
name
rank
up.
them.
We have R. Crumb. Scale from S to D.
Oh, he's S.
He's S.
Like
Off the top, S.
Off the top,
We
got
love a
S.
straight to S tier list.
Tell us why.
okay. I have an. So when I was 13 years old, my mom was at the library one day, and sometimes she would bring books back that she had seen that she thought I liked. She brought me a book called Bob and Harv's Comics, and it was Harvey Pekar. Actually, not really that appropriate for a 13-year-old.
I was gonna say.
But it was like these stories of working at the VA clinic in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Interesting,
realized
Cleveland.
I haven't read that much American Splendor, but I realized just from reading that book how much it influenced how I understood comics, because it was like it was like my grandfather's comics about really documenting everyday life.
Yeah.
And so I would personally list Harvey Pekar as one of my biggest influences.
Harvey Pekar. So we've got Harvey Pekar's this next one. Where's Harvey go?
I feel like you can't with not like Crumb and Pekar go together.
Crumb and Pekar have to be back to back.
Perfect,
Wow,
perfect.
we look so smart for pairing them as the top two
Yeah.
people on this list so
we,
far.
we didn't mean to do it that way, I swear. We
I
just
might have called my shot.
Don't matter.
I guess the next question is, because this also like gets ranked horizontally as well as vertically. Who's on top, Crumb or Pekar?
If you had to choose one, desert island situation.
Choose Pekar.
Pekar, nice.
All right.
Because he's somebody who also didn't really have the drawing chops, but he knew what story should be told.
Sure.
And
That's cool.
I like that. I like that litmus. Next up we got Art Spiegelman.
ooh. That's a tough one because I would say probably put him in the orange. Is the top, the second one.
Yeah.
Incredibly influential. A lot of my experience of studying comics, I read Mouse in college. My dorm, Collins Living Learning Center, was one of the first to have a graphic novel collection. So I read Mouse in college, but then I revisited it when I was graduate school taking a folk narrative class. We talked about the sort of the storytelling. I'll say phenomenal. Meta Mouse too is like, it's like, I love the idea of like the process. Like I've drawn comics about drawing comics.
Yeah.
Seeing the context behind Mouse. I mean, so far I'd put them all in red, but I think in terms of like my personal influence, I put Pekar above Spiegelman.
Good. You gotta have
Nice.
a. I think often a personal metric is what makes a tier list exciting on the show.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Marjane Satrapi.
For me, up with Pekar and Crumb.
Okay, is she in the middle, at the bottom, above Pekar? Where did she go?
She put her in the middle between Pekar and Crumb.
Nice, spicy. I like it.
Yeah,
I read
like it.
I just for fun used to wander the bookstores in college, wander the campus bookstore and see what other people were reading in other classes. When I was taking a Central Eurasian Studies class, I noticed that Persepolis was an offering for another Central Eurasian Studies class.
Interesting.
They taught Farsi. So I looked up the book, and I love the visual style of Satrapi. It's simpler. It's just you can do a lot with a little.
Yeah,
and that is kind of my
Artists
philosophy.
forget that
You
sometimes.
can do a lot with
Yeah.
solid black in her case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then the question is of which of her books, like for me, Persepolis 2.
Yeah, I think
I've read Chicken with Plums and Embroideries. And then I've read both Persepolis books. Persepolis 2. Stories of doing art, like having to be an art student in Iran, I was just mind blown by that
Mhm.
because, obviously, and also the stories of being a student abroad when she was in Europe. It was like, people can get left behind really, really quickly. And I read it about a year before I went abroad to study.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Death Laura says that they have Persepolis on course reserve for 3 different faculty from 3 different departments right now at the library. Just to
Librarian drama.
plug the popularity of the text. Like, wow, very cool.
Totally. Nick, next up we got Alison Bechdel.
Ooh, I put her in orange for personal influence.
Uh-huh.
I will say both Fun Home and Are You My Mother they're just tremendously powerful stories.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like I've only read both of them once, but it's one of those things where if you read something once and it sticks with you, sometimes you don't have to read it again.
Have you
I believe
seen the
about
play?
that with film. Like, think about films that are so intense and so memorable that you've only seen them once.
Yeah.
I would say that Alison Bechdel's like that for both Fun
Sure.
Home and Are You My Mother.
Sure.
Have you seen Fun Home the play?
I have not, but one of our local theater companies
I'm
did it last
curious.
year.
It's real good.
I actually
Yeah.
The musical is
got
great.
on I of course learned about the Bechdel test from.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But and I
From
had
Dykes to Watch Out For. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a small moment of BuzzFeed fame because they were wanting like feminist Christmas carols. So mine was oh Bechdel test, why don't more movies pass you?
Oh my god. Honestly, though, yeah.
I remember when I finally read Alison Bechdel, and I'm just like, oh, like you passed the Bechdel test if there's like 2 women in love. That, I feel like it got popular as like the solution a lot of people came to was way more complicated than like her solution she proposed.
If it's 2 women talking about how much an asshole man is, like if they were talking about like Jordan Peterson or something.
Oh man, I'm
A
writing
lot of Bechdel test passing.
Is she the top or bottom of A?
I'd put her under Marjane Satrapi.
Oh no, where she compared to Art Spiegelman.
Oh, compared to Art Spiegelman, I would put her above Art Spiegelman.
Okay. Got it.
Family dynamic in Fun Home is just like, oh Lord, have mercy.
It's very good. Yeah.
Next up, we're getting to more recent ones here, and next up is T. Bui.
I'm in the middle of reading that one now.
Oh my! It's like, don't tell me I'm literally right next to you.
It's on hand. It's so good. It's so good.
I have to put it in the middle only for the fact that I'm not done with it.
Sure.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, fair enough.
It's breaking my fucking heart already.
Oh, it's really good. Best we could do. The best we could do.
I have noticed there are a huge wave of graphic novels about family life switching from Vietnam to the United States.
Yeah.
I've read 2 previous ones. Also seen several about people leaving Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that maybe is because like folks like Ocean Vuong, they have opened up that world too with North Were Briefly Gorgeous, the book. I don't know, but I've noticed that that's really a lot of stories about leaving Vietnam and resettling the U.S.
Well, and that's fascinating too because the photographs taken were so impactful to, I think, maybe global, but at least American perception of the Vietnam War.
Have you read the book?
That I wonder if the graphic novel version is kind of a reclamation of the visual medium in a similar way. I don't know. That's just me.
Have you read the book, Daisy?
Nope.
Okay, stop guessing things correctly.
Nope, but sorry. Okay.
Personally, I wonder if Tic Bui had been inspired by Craig Thompson. I see a lot of visual similarities to Craig Thompson, who did Blankets and Habibi.
Didn't make it on the list, but I know Habibi.
Yeah.
Craig Thompson is the only graphic novelist nominated for a Grammy. He did the cover of Friend or Foe by the band Menomina and was nominated for Best Recording Package.
Huh. I didn't know that was a nomination. I love that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Damn, dropping these facts on us too. Hell yeah. Let's go.
Next up, I dare say is someone whose work I think you know pretty well. But I do not know how to say this name because all
I
French
have
sounds
a
like Latin
guess.
to me. Yeah.
I have a guess. Guy Delisle.
No, it's totally Guy, right?
Guy Delisle.
Guy
Guy
Delisle.
Delisle. Okay. Now I
Guy
tried.
Del- yes.
Guy Delisle.
I
Where are we
would-
putting Guy?
He's higher than Picard. He's ice.
No,
Here's
do
why.
we have to make the very rare double S tier or the S plus tier?
Maybe.
All right.
Okay. Do it. We're
Okay.
making it.
You love to see
This
it.
is
You love
like
to
they
see
have
it.
gone. They are so powerful
They
that
have
they have
ascended.
gone beyond. They've ascended beyond superb,
This is some
spectacular.
Super
and
Saiyan 2 shit.
This is God
They're Super
level
Saiyan.
power of amazing.
So my background with experience at Guy Delisle. So I once picked up one of those best non-required reading of 2000 something, and Pyongyang: A Journey to North Korea. There's an excerpt
Yep.
from there.
Yep.
Blew my mind
Amazing.
absolutely because I love travelogues. I was really like, having studied abroad, I love travelogues like Bill Bryson, Bruce Chatwin's In Patagonia, some of Thor Heyerdahl stuff, and his styles. Because he also comes from the French school, the bande dessinée, and he also was part of the Drawn and Quarterly. So there's a lot of influence, but the funny thing is if some of my drawing, you notice my characters have mouths sometimes, unless they're speaking. That is a direct influence from Guy Delisle.
Huh.
Yes.
And
I
Guy
did
Delisle-
notice that. I was curious about. Well, I have more nuanced questions for you that we could talk about at another time. But yes, yeah.
Other thing that Guy Delisle is really good at is drawing buildings and drawing the built environment. And so I would say all my Baltimore work that I did is really because I took pictures and then I went back and sketched it out, which is what Guy Delisle did. But it's also the story of all of his work is also kind of an interesting coping strategy, because he was doing all the work he was doing most of those countries like Chronique Berman, Burma Chronicles, and Jerusalem, Tales from the Holy City, because his wife worked for Médecins Sans Frontières, or for Doctors Without Borders.
Oh.
And he was working on Pyongyang while he was in Burma, and he was working on Burma Chronicles while his wife was stationed somewhere else. It's also like the life of a house husband / cartoonist. But his comedic stuff, like Albert Albert and the Others, is one of the funniest comic sets because it's silent comics, and that's the power of saying a lot with no dialogue. I think you can't create a comic with dialogue if you can't create a comic without one.
Sure. We got two more left. Second to last is Maya Kobabe.
Okay. Give me examples, because I may have.
Daisy,
you have this book on you?
Okay. This is my suggestion. It's a recent novel that's gotten a lot of popular reviews in queer literature. As a person, it's the personal experience narrative. The book is literally called Genderqueer.
Okay, I just
I
read this. I did just read this.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it.
okay, yeah, I was like...
Yeah, I've seen this book everywhere this summer. Yeah.
EM era pronouns. A lot of people are getting the book recently.
Mhm.
It just has been popping off 2022. And so I was curious if you had a take.
It was on the table of the Pride table at Cedar Rapids Public Library, and I read it.
Sure.
I say, I will put that in the orange category, really, because I just read it.
Like with Art and Allison?
I will put it up there because, as somebody who only really is kind of opened up as being gender non-conforming / genderqueer, I'm still trying to figure out that own terminology for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 37 and only kind of realizing that. So I think that's what I think about the book quite a lot. So I think that's because the influence is forming. But I don't, in terms of my in terms of artistic inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
I would put it there. It's not as big of an influence on my actual drawing.
Makes
Sure,
sense.
sure.
That makes sense.
And
As like a personal influence as opposed to an artistic influence. Makes sense. Yeah. Or like
do you like
creative
air
part.
there or elsewhere in the A
No,
tier?
I go. Let's put air in the middle between those two.
Got it. And we've potentially saved the best for last. Last is Glenn Curtis.
Yeah, he's up there with Gita Lil.
Hell
So,
yeah.
This
Hell
is
yeah.
this is
Plus tier, everybody.
Snipe?
Let's go.
actually he goes
This
above
for-
Gita
for
Lil.
people
He goes
who
above
don't know.
Gita Lil.
Oh,
Oh.
so nice.
Everybody, so to
All
give
right,
background,
folks.
Please do.
this is my 92-year-old grandfather who was born in 1930 and started copying Popeye and Little Orphan Annie off his town newspapers comics. And he
That
actually
is cool.
he went to art school. He actually did the same. He did like the mail and cartooning program
Mhm.
through art instructional schools in
Oh, hell yeah.
Minneapolis. Well, if you may not be aware, but one of the people who was an instructor for art instruction schools at the time was Charles Schultz. So I'm kind of like recently I've been thinking about this, like, yeah, it would have been awesome if Sparky had been my grandfather's like proctor. Like I
Yeah.
think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool thing because I just went last November, December to the Schultz Museum in Santa Rosa, California, and there's his desk, and I'm just like, it's a pilgrimage. It feels because I grew up reading Peanuts. I grew up reading Calvin and Hobbes. I also grew up reading even like the serial series comics, like Funky Winker Bean and For Better or For Worse, the one where people age.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather also drew comics for 2 newspapers in Posey County for 12 to 13 years, and then he kept drawing comics for people. So like, usually my elementary school teachers got a comic from my grandpa. Usually about them like being happy that they don't have me anymore as a teacher.
Yeah.
But it's really funny because
speaking of material culture, the desk is such an interesting site of pilgrimage. What the heck? That's so fascinating. Yeah.
right,
That's for so many historical figures. The desk where the thinking happened there. So interesting.
When you go to a presidential museum, they always have their desk there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's usually a recreation of the Oval Office as it was when it was going on. Not just their desk, but then also the First Lady's desk. I went to the Nixon Museum in Yorba Linda, California in April, and yeah, it's like Nixon's desk right there. That's like probably where he announced that he was resigning. Because
yeah, so wild.
But yeah, and then like looks like Harry Truman, who had one that's literally that sign says "The buck stops here."
Yeah, like the essence in that space, even though they probably were thinking constantly in every space that they went about these huge tasks, subjects, creative expressions, whatever. Any individual, like, I love my desk. I sit at my desk all the time. I call it my mega desk. It's my space of work. It's not always my space of thinking. And I feel like that relationship to the object becomes like legendary in itself because it's like the closest proximity you can to the physical space the vessel the body was in. I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little too dream brain right now. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, here we have it. Nic's official autobiographical comics creator tier list.
Here it is.
On a scale
who did we not say that you would have wanted on the list?
Oh yeah, good question.
I'm always curious about that. Like who is a name that we didn't have?
Greg Thompson.
Who?
Greg Thompson.
Oh yes.
Blankets, Habibi.
Yeah.
I would have wanted him on the list. Actually, I'm inspired by Merrick Bennett because his adaptation of oral history in comic form. The goal is like I was trying to work with Merrick at one of my former jobs and ended up becoming really interested in like I'll join in on a live draw with Merrick.
Oh.
But also I'm trying to think. One of my inspirations more recently has been Charles Adams.
Oh yeah.
And like really but I didn't read a lot of superhero comics growing up. I read Mad and I would say Mad is up definitely not Mad Magazine artists. I'm thinking mostly like Don Martin and Sergio Aragones who would be on there. Sergio,
Yes.
the kind of folks who did like the lighter side of part of Mad Magazine would be on there. But yeah, I was the type where I said I didn't read a lot of superhero comics, and even now I don't really. I sometimes do. Right now, like my favorite series that I read manga with my kids, and recently I read Check Please, which is a comic graphic novel about a guy who is a really good baker, but he's also on the hockey team of a small liberal arts college.
Talk about
That's
going.
cool.
Yeah, talk about going. To
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's a former figure skater who's openly gay and bakes pies for his teammates, and he's not like the best player on the team, but everybody loves him. Situation.
Daisy, are you able to sum this up better than me?
Oh my god.
All I was gonna say is on a scale from
Okay.
S to D, how are you related to Nick?
Yeah, I was something along the lines of like, how influential have you been on Nick's creative process? That's pretty good. Yeah. Thank you for that wonderful interview. Thank you for being on our show. This was so much fun.
I think you need some stuff to think about.
This has been awesome. Yeah. People in the chat, you know what to do. If you have ladders because you're a subscriber, post the ladders. If you don't have ladders, a hearty GG's, good games in the chat. It works just as well. But thank Nick, thank the sleuths, thank everybody for making this show happen, and thank Nick for having some extremely insightful, I don't know, contributions to my thinking about what it means to be a folklorist. And
I feel like the two of you should like just be friends and talk all the time, Nick and Daisy.
That's
like
fun.
most
kind
of
of
my
felt like I do
Instagram
Daisies.
Yeah.
Yeah, your energy. You're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.